So I've been asked by quite a few members of iPhotography to give a little demonstration as to what I did with the edits on these photographs that I've uploaded recently to the Facebook group. So I thought I'd just put a couple, I think I uploaded 3, so I've got a couple of them here. I've got the before and afters, and I just wanted to kind of show you a little bit about what I've done as to kind of how to achieve the results, because they're so easy, they're so simple to do. I've also included at the top here my metadata, so what I actually shot the original photographs at. You can see the final version here on the left hand side and the originals on the right, but as you can see from the setups here, there's nothing kind of overly fancy that I've done. I've had to change my shutter speed a little bit just to compensate for the light, but I've tried to keep my aperture fairly wide open throughout, and you'll see the ISO is pretty much at 100 throughout all these shots. And I was shooting on a fixed lens at 50mm anyway, so the focal length's not changed throughout. But anyway, just to show you, so we've got our final version on the left hand side here, and hopefully I'm going to be able to get to the exact same point because I'm doing this all after the fact. So the first thing that I'm always going to really do on a photograph is to crop it, because you really want to be dealing with the space that you're actually going to be editing with. So let's just kind of get rid of the reference view here, and let's just now crop it. And now I only cropped it a little bit. I only tend to come in an ever so slight amount, because I'd like to try and make sure that I kind of crop in camera first. So again, it's only very slight, but I just took a little bit of the edge off, so I've always got something to go back to. So for the edits I've done, I've got two presets that I use a lot of the time. They're not one-click solutions, as we always say. Presets, as you'll see, I'll go on to tweak a little bit further. So I've got 2 that kind of give me a little bit of the flavor for the style of photography that I do. So I think this is kind of where I started off, and it's what I call my fashion preset. I know I'm not using it on fashion photography at all. I've never really done that much of fashion photography, and especially I've not used this preset for that. So it just goes to show that some filters and presets, they can have different uses elsewhere. So once that's applied, I'm just going to amp up the saturation a little bit. The vibrance has already gone up. The vibrance is there to kind of boost the brightness of the color, and the saturation is obviously there for the intensity of it. But you can see we're actually not far off already. So you can see, even just from that, 1-2 steps, I've not really had to do a lot to achieve, the finished article. So it goes to show that, it's not that hard, really. Once you get it done in camera correct and you've got the idea correct, you've got all the right resources afterwards, it's pretty kind of straightforward afterwards. So I'm just tweaking the color temperature a little bit. I think I was going to take it down just by a stop there. And again, I may just brighten up the highlights a little bit and the whites ever so slightly. They're only making a micro bit of difference. I'll just lift the sharpness a little bit, because especially when I'm putting images up online, I want to make sure that it's compensating for any of that online compression. Remove chromatic aberration, and I'll always put the default profile in there. Now hopefully it should recognize the camera lens. Nope, it's pulled up the wrong one. It's going to put a calibration on it anyway, even though it's the wrong lens, and I can't actually change it to my lens there. But it's not done a bad job. I mean, without it, yeah, it's not really done too much, to be honest. I could leave it off, to be honest, as well, because yeah, it's not really kind of changing things massively. I do like to add vignettes. Never a white vignette, always a black one. But yeah, actually, let's kind of compare up if we can, just with go back to our reference. So our final reference version was here on the left hand side. So yeah, I'm not a million miles off. I probably want to be a little bit more intense in the background. I may just kind of go to the yellows and just amp up that individual channel. I'm probably going to do the luminance actually instead. Yeah, there we go. So I'm going to boost those a little bit more. So these are just individual color channels. So I'm just trying to increase. There we go. Just to kind of increase their presence a little bit, make them stand out that little bit more. That green's maybe a little bit too much there. But there we go. I mean, it's not far off. I say I'm trying to recreate something I've already done previously, which is it's never always easy. To do it in the moment would be a lot better. But that's effectively the process for the first image. So, I mean, that preset itself has got me, a good 90% of the way, which is always a very useful thing. It means you can get through workflow a little bit quicker. But there's one. Let's have a look at one. Maybe look at one that's a little bit more heavy in terms of editing. So my finished version here again is on the left hand side. I should swap these around really, shouldn't I? If I can do that. No, I've always got it that way. Right, so yeah, my finished version's on the left and my starting version's on the right. So I've tried to make it a little bit more kind of fantasy-like. We get a nice kind of soft light in the background there, and it's a much more warmer light. So let's start off with what we've got. Now, if I knew to use any of my presets here, it doesn't necessarily kind of give me the finish straight away, even with editing that I want. So I think in this instance, I actually started off just as I was and just kind of started to kind of edit from the original image. Again, I'm just going to crop. I wanted to come in a little bit closer. Now, I think the version of the image I've got here is not my raw file, so I know for a fact it's not as crisp and clear as the original, but unfortunately I don't have that on this computer today. So I'm just going to have to work with what I've got. So I'm just increasing the exposure, warming up the color temperature a little bit, and as you can see already, we've lifted a lot of detail to begin with, and we've only made small differences. I'm going to lift the blacks and lift the shadows because I know it's quite dark. I'm keeping an eye on my histogram. I know there is a lot of areas that are clipping, but it's fine because they're not really that important to the image. I just wanted to make sure I can get this kind of through path going visible and nice and clear. Right, so let me kind of come down a little bit further. Again, just going to increase the sharpening a little bit, even though it's probably not going to do great favors for this image because it's a bit low quality to begin with. Let's turn on that chromatic aberration and the lens profile. It's probably not going to do much, but it's always better to be safe than sorry. And I'm going to use my vignette down at the bottom here. I'm just going to kind of invert that kind of quite a substantial amount because I do want to kind of hide the elements on the edges here. We've got a little bit of the trees creeping in and the bushes creeping in the left and right, but I want that to be kind of cast mostly in black so the eye is drawn more and more towards where the light is. To help with that, I can actually add a filter. A graduated filter. So just on Lightroom here, I'm just going to press my graduated filter and I'm just going to pull it up from the bottom. Maybe a bit too much there. Let's go down a little bit more. About there, I think I'm happy with. I'm just going to do it again from the side. Maybe a little bit too much there, Stephen. Pull one down from the top. Maybe one in from the side a little bit there. So it just encloses the whole space, really. That's kind of what I'm going for. That's the look. So, right, in terms of colours, I think this is probably where we're going to come out a little bit better now. So, what have we got? So the greens. So if I can go back to my reference version. So we need to be a lot warmer, a lot warmer. So I think we're going to have to kind of increase these oranges a little bit more. So I'm trying to kind of see where those colors are coming from. Right, okay. And this is a process that can take kind of quite a while, really. It's not to say that some edits, or all edits take the same length of time. They all can vary depending upon the amount of time that you're trying to put into them and the amount of changes that you're trying to make as well. Obviously, if you can do most of your work in camera, brilliant. But it's not always the case. You know, I saw the scene and I knew what I wanted, and so I shot as close as I possibly could to it. But it's things like the color work, the crop, the vignettes, things like that I couldn't really fully apply in camera, and sometimes you don't always have the opportunity to do so. So this is where editing becomes really, really helpful. So there we go. Tweak the colors a little bit, made it a bit warmer by kind of pushing the color temperature up a little bit more. The next thing I remember doing, as I said, I'm doing this all kind of backwards in a way of showing you it afterwards, is just using an adjustment brush in this dark area here. So it's made it all black, but let's just show you where the brush is. So that's the area that I'm highlighting. So without the brush, you see that it's lowered the exposure, but that's just by default in Lightroom. So you can just always send that back to the start. All right, so we've got that whole area covered. And then we're just going to go reduce the contrast a little bit, because what reducing the contrast will do is obviously not only kind of it stops the gradation between black and white kind of being so harsh and that transition so quick, but it lightens the image ever so slightly. It's a cool little trick that instead of pushing your exposure all the time, if you can afford to, if your image is sharp, you can just lower down your contrast a little bit, and it gives you that little bit of boost in brightness. Dehaze tool, that's the other one that I wanted to use, because I kind of found this very, very useful, is that if I kind of push it up one way, you see how much obviously it kind of contrasts just in that one particular area, but if you push it the other way, you can see now it just softens. Now I'm not going to go to that degree, because I don't really want it to look too fake, but I will just reduce it a substantial amount from where it was. There we go. And I think that just kind of makes that kind of little area that little bit softer. Now again, let's just pull back up our reference image. Okay, yeah, so now we need to kind of reduce the whole overall exposure. So we're just making it that little bit darker, a little bit more mysterious. Now can we go a little bit heavier? So I'm going back to like the same tools over and over again, and you will find that you do this in edits. You make a tweak and you change it and it changes something else. So unless you're making lots of little local changes, you will spend your life going forwards and backwards to the same tools. But that's not a bad thing. You're just tweaking it a little bit here, changing it there, going forwards and backwards. It's like any type of art. So I've just changed the exposure a little bit. It's just going to reduce down the whites. Let's see if we reduce down the highlights just so we can keep a bit more of that detail. I think we're getting there now. We're getting a lot closer. As I said, probably not going to be able to recreate it exactly. It's just one of those things you always end up doing. And you can never repeat yourself straight away, which is typical. There we go. Lovely. But either way, even if I had, just didn't have the original and this is what I'd edited, I'd be very, very happy with that in the meantime. So it gives me that kind of nice soft light. I possibly may kind of crack out an adjustment brush and just add a little bit more light down on this pathway here. But either way, as it stands, I'm really, really happy with that. So let's just have a look at the last image. So let's bring this one up. So we'll put our reference picture next to it. There we go. So I think this is pretty much just a one-click solution with a preset. Now I did say before, it's not something I normally do. I normally go and tweak it a little bit. I mean, I'm sure I did, but I was just actually quite happy with how the preset had set. I don't think the preset that I used, though, I've actually got. I think it was a little bit of a different one from what I use down here. So I do use these two pretty much, 80% of the time if I'm ever using a preset, but this must be the occasion that I've used a different one. But either way, let's kind of start off with that one that I've got there. And if we can kind of just brighten that up a little bit more. And we'll reduce down that. We'll take the contrast. So if you can see what I was saying about the contrast before, if you reduce the contrast down, how much brighter your image gets. So I'm going to make it that little bit cooler. Just make the color temperature a bit colder. And same again there. So I'm kind of quite happy with the whites. I have a feeling I'm probably not going to be able to get exactly to the same point that I did with my final version with not having that preset to hand. So I apologize. Let's just see now. Okay. Now I think... Well, maybe better. Let's go to our hue channel here. And let's just try and kind of let's see if we can get this green to a similar tone. Let's see. I'm getting a huge shift in these two here. There we go. It's in the aqua. So you sometimes got to play with what colors that you see and where they actually are affected by which color slider. So sometimes you have to make one change to get the other slider working a little bit more. Maybe pump up the saturation so it is making more of a visible effect. Okay, that's a little bit closer. I know it's a bit intense, but then I can go backwards, like we were saying before. Go to the luminance, just take that down a little bit. So I'm kind of getting in the right region. I don't feel that I'm going to be able to get it exactly the same for you, but the process, this is doing it maybe more manually than using the preset that I was saying I was using when I did this the other day. So yeah, I'm not going to touch the sharpness because I know the image is sharp. I don't want to overcook it too much. I think I probably have added a little bit of a vignette I can see, so there's a bit already there. I'm just going to take it down a tiny touch more. So yeah, okay, and maybe not exactly the same, but certainly that preset did help me out, so I'll have to crack that out one day and find it myself. So I can kind of show you again more accurately. But anyway, hopefully that helps a little bit more, just to give you a bit more of an impression as kind of how I edited those photos. So if I get a chance to go out and do some more, I will try to remind myself if I do any extensive edits to record them, and I can show you them in the meantime. But it'd be lovely to do the same for yourselves, that if you've been out shooting, if you want to spend a little bit of time editing and you get a chance to record it, there's loads of different ways you can record on screen if you've got a microphone as well. It'd be lovely to understand your practices, and it helps out with so many more people that are watching. But in the meantime, thank you very much, and bye-bye for now.